Hello, my name is John Dillon and we're here to talk about Apex programming. So today the topic is going to be JSON and Apex, or Apex and JSON. If you're not familiar, JSON is a data format that's useful in typically in JavaScript. Other languages use it as well because it's such a convenient format. I'm not going to dive into what JSON is. If you want me to jump into that a little deeper, let me know and I can make an explanation. But right now I just wanted to show how it works in the Salesforce world, different ways we can use it. And this is a big topic, so it's actually going to be broken into a couple of parts. So this will be part 1 on Apex and JSON. So let's take a look. So the use case we're going to explore is around the opportunity. So I've got an opportunity here, Edge Emergency Generator, and we've got some products that have been added to this opportunity. There's 4 of them if we were to look. So what we're gonna say is, and this is a bit contrived, but I think it'll suit the purposes for what we're after here, which is simply to show how we can use JSON in Apex. So the use case we're going to say is here on the details page of the opportunity, we want to display the products, but let's say our users don't like the way this product is displaying here in the sidebar. They want it to actually be here on the details page. So lots of different ways we can work with that. Let's suppose the way that we're going to embed some visual force here on the details page, and so we're going to put basically a little web page here on top of the details, and then to feed it the information, we're going to do a query from Apex, get information from the products that are associated to this opportunity, and we're going to send them to the web page using JSON. Now, of course, like I said, there's many ways to do this, but this will be a good illustration for what we're looking for here today. So let's start writing some code around this. So for starters, we're going to need an Apex class, which is going to be the controller for the visual force page that we will create. And since this we're going to be a controller, we're going to need to create a constructor that is necessary for controllers in Apex. So any visual force controller is going to need a constructor. And as we've mentioned before, constructor is always going to have the same name as the class that we're defining it in. And this constructor, in order for this to work on a visual force page, it needs a constructor that takes a standard controller. And once we have that, the standard controller has a method called getRecord, which will get us the record that this is associated to. And we have to cast it into an opportunity. Otherwise we get a compiler error. So that's just boilerplate stuff that we need for a controller. Now the next thing we're going to do is need a way to access the data. And so I'm going to make a get method for that. Okay, so in this case, again, we've got to start somewhere. We're starting with essentially nothing, but get product data is going to return a string, and that's where we're going to have our JSON data. And so the next thing we're going to need to do is query the products associated to this opportunity. And we're going to start with the opportunity line item. So when we're looking at our page with our opportunity on it, this list of products here these are actually, when you look at what's going on underneath, these are actually opportunity line items. They do all point to products, so that's why they look like products, and even the label on the page is products. But the actual object underneath is opportunity line item. I'll probably do a video later that will show how we can actually figure that out. You know, if we're looking at something on the page and we don't know what it is, how we can determine that. But that's not the point of this video, so let's press on with our JSON. So we are going to grab our products. We'll call them products, even though we know they're opportunity line items. We're going to grab the name, the quantity, the total price from opportunity line item, and we only want them if their opportunity ID matches the opportunity that we're working with, of course. All right, next thing what we're going to need to do is we could just take opportunity line items and convert them into JSON, but that could be very messy. There's probably going to be a lot of data, and a lot of data that we don't care about. So often it's a good idea to have an intermediate class, simply a data class that we use to convert into JSON. And if that doesn't make sense, hopefully it will once we go down and implement it. So down at the bottom of this class, we'll define another class, an inner class to this. So if you haven't seen set and get before, these look like variables, but what they really are properties, and set and get are the ways that we access them. Now, again, I'm not going to go into the details of this. If you want me to explain that, feel free to reach out in the comments or send me a direct message, and I can create a video all about properties. So, but if you're not familiar, all you have to do is think of these as public variables. Actually, I do need to make these all public. And notice I'm not keeping these exactly the same as what we're getting from the opportunity line items. Opportunity line items, we have name, quantity, and total price. Here, we're calling it name, count, and price. I'm doing that just to illustrate that they don't have to have the same description or the same labels. So what we do from here so what we want to do is loop through our opportunity line items and do something with them. And what we'd like to do is populate an array of product data. So up here, I'll define a product data array. And as we loop through the products, we'll simply create instances of product data and add them to the array. And as you can see, this is where we're mapping a product to a product field to the counterpart in the data array. Next thing is we're going to take this array and we're going to convert it into JSON format. Now, we could have done any data structure. We could have done maps. We could have done it kind of doesn't matter, but the tools within Apex allow us to do a conversion from basically a list of this object into a string. And we'll do that once we're done with the for loop. And what we use to do that is there's a class called JSON. And JSON has lots of methods on it. We can do parsers, we can deserialize, we can serialize. Again, not going to go into all of this. We're simply going to look at serialize today. So what we're going to do is take this array, and notice one thing I kind of glossed over. We're taking an array and we're doing an add to it. And I've mentioned before, in Salesforce, there's really no difference between arrays and lists. So here I'm using that relationship to show, to basically initialize as an array, but use the list methods to get there. If that sounds a little confusing, I've got a playlist on data structures. So feel free to look up lists in the data structures playlist. And of course, let me know if there's questions if that doesn't clear it up. So this is it. We have a class that's going to serialize an array into a JSON string. So just to take a look at what this looks like, let's do some debugging. And then when we call this, we can, which we're not ready to yet, but when we call this, we can actually dump it out and see what these things look like and what's the difference between an array in Salesforce and the resulting JSON string. And that should be all we need for the controller class. Let's take a look at creating a Visualforce page. So with our Visualforce page, we're going to use the standard controller, and that's going to be opportunity. But we're also going to use the extension, which is our product display controller. We're also going to use jQuery to do this. I'm not going to go into the details of jQuery because that's really outside the scope of this channel. But it's a useful tool to use when you're trying to dynamically build web pages. And I'm going to add a little bit of style, and rather than jump into the details of the CSS, I'm just going to copy this. Okay. So we're set up for jQuery. We've got some styles defined. And our page will be very simple. We just simply need a div. Oops, already getting an error on my constructor. Let's revisit the controller. I forgot to make this public. All right, that fixes that. And within this, I'm going to put two things in here. One is going to be a span, which is just a message for when we get no products, and the other was going to be a table that holds the product data. And our JavaScript is going to be in a script that I stick in the bottom of the page. It doesn't matter where it goes, but a lot of times I like to have my logic. I like to have my presentation up at the top and my logic at the bottom. So here, this is the first place where we're actually going to be accessing the JSON that our controller is sending back to us. So here we're using a getter, and again, this is like a property. Again, I'm probably do a video on properties coming up. So product data, this relates to, in our controller, get product data. The get basically is unnecessary. So when we tell the controller this method's called get product data, it knows it's a getter or a property. And then from our Visualforce page, all we need is the name. We don't need the get portion. And the reason I'm using single quotes here is because when JSON comes back, it's going to have double quotes around various aspects of it. So if I used double quotes here in the JavaScript, that would cause us problems. So single quotes around our Visualforce access, and we'll be good. And just for we could log it just to see. And JavaScript's a nice language in that you can put a lot of different things in an if statement. It doesn't have to be Boolean. So basically, if this is null, it's not going to jump into the if statement, or I think even if it's blank, and then we'll, that way we. The important thing is if it's null, because if it's null, we're going to have some problems, and this is a good way to just avoid any of those like null pointer issues. Okay, so we're just going to remove our default message, which is no products found. So if we've got some, we know we can take that out of the picture. And the next thing what we're going to do is build up a table using jQuery. I'm not going to dive into the details of this. Just trust me that this works. But what we're going to do is access this data table, and we'll just start adding our rows to it as we loop through our product data. All right, so here's where we pull in the JSON piece. So we pulled our JSON out of the Visualforce, verified that we actually have something. Now in JavaScript, we've got this method, or this class, if you can call it a class, that'll parse this and turn it into something. So with JavaScript is a loosely typed language, so what we don't necessarily know what's going to come through here, but we know on the Apex side what we did is we put together an array of objects. So we know when we parse it out, it's going to get converted to JSON like that, and when we parse it out, we're also going to get an array of objects. So you definitely have to know what's going on both sides of the communication here. But it also can be, there are ways where it can be loose, and I'll talk about that in another video. So at this point, we know we've got an array, so we can simply loop through it. So just to quickly go over what we did, we set up a header for the table, name, count, and price. And then we're going to add, for each entry in the product array, we're going to add a row and then we're going to put in the piece of data with the name, the count, and the price. So notice these match the object that we set in our Apex class, name, count, price. Those do have to match. And there's no compiler to check it for us. If we had a problem with that, we won't see it until runtime. So the compiler does not help with this. So we've got our Visualforce page and we've got our controller. Next thing we need to do is add this Visualforce page to our page layout on the opportunity. So here on the page layout, we can look for visual force pages. We found our product display because we've registered this as a visual force page with the standard controller for opportunity. And let's stick it all the way in the bottom. I made a section already for products, so we'll just drag our visual force page down there. And that should be it. Let's save and see what we get. If we click details, we should see something at the bottom. And we do. We got a table. So this table dynamically generated using jQuery. And this is the data that we passed in that matches from what's over here. And only seeing 3 entries, but I know there were 4. I believe, I don't know, maybe one of them got cut off for a height restriction for this. But I'm not going to worry about that too much, because the important thing was that we had our JSON that we serialized on the Apex side and we deserialized it on the JavaScript side. So let's take a look at the logs just to see what that ended up looking like. So here we can see a little bit of the difference. The data array has this is just the way an array is printed out in Apex. Product data, and it's got each of the items inside of it. But when we go down to JSON, this is what it looks like. Price, name. So same information, different order, slightly different syntax. Here our JSON starts with a square bracket. And if we wanted to, let's just, oh, it's not the complete thing. So let me look at what was dumped out to our console log on the browser. So here we can see our product data that we dumped out, and it's complete. So I'm going to take this and paste it here in an editor where I've got it set up to do, oops. Let me get rid of this beginning thing. So my editor should be able to pretty print our JSON for us. And it does. So we can see we've got an array of 1, 2, 3, 4 objects. So all 4 objects came through. We just didn't display one of them, probably again for a height restriction. So this is what the JSON is. So again, let me go back to the Apex. In Apex, we've got our product data structure. And when we build up that array and we call JSON serialize, this is what it creates. And then when we're on the page, our JavaScript consumes this and uses this to build up the UI. So I hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions on this, I know there was kind of a lot here, and you know, there's a lot more to this as well, which we will dive into. But feel free, if there's anything here that wasn't clear, give me a shout. You know, either whether it's in the comments or send me a DM. So one thing I started last month that I'm going to continue through October is I'm taking on coaching clients. This is a kind of a beta test of my coaching program. If you are interested in learning, getting some one-on-one time with me and learning about Apex, how it affects your career, or any kind of guidance, you know, feel free to reach out to me. I'm taking just a handful of people. Again, I'll do this through the month of October. There's no charge. All I ask is for some feedback, and let me know if you are interested in that. Also, I've got a free mini course that is called Apex Patterns and Anti-Patterns, where we go over best practices around developing in Apex, things to do and things to avoid. So feel free to check that out. The link is in the description of this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.